Part 1: Arrival at the Devil's Maw. The first thing that hit me wasn't the cold. It was the silence. When the unmarked trawler left me at the dock, its engine cut out just long enough for me to hear the sea breathing, deep, slow, and wrong. Waves broke somewhere below the fog, but their rhythm wasn't natural. It sounded like something large was turning beneath the surface, keeping time with a pulse I couldn't place. The deckhand tossed me my duffel without a word. Then he started the motor and vanished into the mist before I could ask when the next supply run would be. I was alone, until I heard a laugh echoing down the path. "Welcome to the edge of the world, lad." A broad figure appeared through the fog, a heavy coat, salt in his beard, smile like cracked granite. Finn Magnusson, my partner for the next 3 months. His handshake was firm, the kind you don't break without offending a man who's lived too long with the sea. "You must be Callahan," he said. "By the fjords, you're younger than I expected. Thought they'd send another fossil like me." "Jim's fine," I said, hoisting the duffel. "How long have you been out here?" Finn grinned. "Depends what you mean by out here." "On the island?" "6 winters." "In the moor?" He gestured toward the churning grey abyss surrounding the cliffs. "My whole bloody life." The climb to the lighthouse was brutal, a zigzag path cut into rock slick with algae and windborne frost. The sea kept roaring under us, sometimes too close, like it wanted to swallow the path whole. When we reached the top, the tower loomed from the mist like a ghost of iron and stone, 50 meters of weathered concrete patched with old welds and rust. Its lantern turned slowly, once every 42 seconds, casting a pale cone that sliced through the fog before fading into nothing. Finn slapped the metal wall affectionately. "Vardo Light. She's the last of her kind. They stopped maintaining her years ago, but Nordrisk pays us well enough to keep the beam spinning." "Why would a private company care about one old lighthouse?" I asked. Finn's eyes narrowed. "You'll see soon enough." Inside, the tower was warmer but not comforting. Machinery hummed under the floorboards, generators, pumps, sonar relays. The control room was cluttered with old logbooks, weather printouts, and a yellowing sheet of paper pinned to the console. The top read, "Operational Directive, Skuvoy Light Station." And beneath that, 4 handwritten lines in red ink. Finn tapped the page with a calloused finger. "Your survival manual. Learn it before dark. The 4 rules. Rule 1, never let the light stop, never let the sonar go blind." Finn's voice dropped an octave when he recited it. "The beam completes 1 full turn every 42 seconds. If it stops longer than 90, well, you don't want to know what climbs up to check why." He opened a maintenance hatch and showed me the sonar screen, 4 frequency bands sweeping across a static-filled ocean map. "It listens below, where the light can't reach. If both ever fail together, that's when it comes." "It?" I asked. He smiled without humor. "The sea keeps its secrets, lad. We just keep the light alive. Rule 2, if the tower shakes without wind, do not look down." Finn pointed to a deep crack spiraling up the inner wall, patched with resin. 1953, a keeper named Thorson ignored this one. Thought it was a storm. The whole west stairwell came down, and so did he. They said the sea boiled red for an hour. The divers found no trace. He leaned closer, whispering, "The locals call it the Kraken, but it's not the monster from your fairy tales. It doesn't eat, it tests the stone, like it remembers what we built here and wants it back." Rule 3, when you hear your dead speak your name, run to the radio room and play channel 16 at max volume. I raised an eyebrow. "That one's a joke, right?" Finn's expression hardened. "Ask Lars Peterson if it's a joke." "The fisherman?" He used to fish the moor before the storms got worse. One night, he swore he heard his wife calling him from the waves. She drowned years before. He answered her. The Coast Guard found his boat half sunk, holes drilled from inside out. The only thing he remembered was her voice, begging him to come home. Finn lit a cigarette and exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. The radio static drives them back. Always has. Rule 4, when the dead fleet appears, kill the light. Count to 333. Then turn it back on. Finn's tone was pure warning now. They're not stories, Jim. The old warships drift through on moonless nights, 7 of them, still crude, still shining blue. If the light catches them, they see us. And you don't want them to see us. I laughed nervously. That's oddly specific. He didn't smile. A keeper in 87 didn't count right. They found his boots still standing by the lens, no feet inside. By the time he finished, dusk had settled over the ocean. The fog glowed faintly orange from the setting sun, and the beam from Vado light swept across the endless mist like a blade. I couldn't help watching the reflection in the glass. Every 42 seconds, the world blinked. We ate dinner in silence. Canned beans, bread gone hard at the edges. Finn told me about his grandfather, a diver who vanished in 1968 while searching for a Nazi gold shipwreck off these very cliffs. They said he was cursed, Finn murmured, eyes fixed on the sonar monitor. But I think he found something the sea didn't want to share. At 23:17, the sonar beeped. Once. Twice. Then 3 slow pulses. Finn froze mid-chew. 3 slow beats, he whispered. Just like in 53. I leaned over the monitor. The pattern repeated, 3 long pings, spaced exactly 5 seconds apart, echoing from 1,800 meters below. The 4th bend flickered and went dead. Probably a calibration glitch, offered, but Finn was already moving, flipping switches, tapping dials. His face had lost all color. By the fjords, he hissed, it's awake. The tower trembled, softly at first, like the aftershock of a distant quake. Then the lantern above us groaned, and the beam slowed, its motor whining under strain. Power surge! I shouted. Back up, Jen? Manual override, now! Finn barked, slamming open a panel and thrusting a metal lever downward. The rotation steadied with a metallic screech. 42 seconds. 43. 44. A thud echoed from below the cliffs, deep and wet. The glass panes quivered. Don't look down, Finn said through gritted teeth. I didn't. We stayed there, frozen, as the tremor passed. The sonar steadied again. 4 bands swept clean. Whatever it was, if it was real, had gone back to sleep. Finn finally exhaled. First night's free lesson, lad. You keep the light spinning, and the sea forgets your name. He handed me a flask. I took a long swallow, salt and smoke and fire. Outside, the fog swallowed the beam whole, but I could still feel it turning. 42 seconds between each flash, steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere deep below, something listened. Part 2: The Siren Depths. The days blurred together. Out here, time was a circle, 42 seconds wide. I kept track of it by the light's rotation, the rhythm that separated us from whatever waited below. Each turn brought the faint metallic click of the bearing, a sound that meant safety. A sound that meant we were still here. Finn slept less as the days went on. He'd sit by the sonar like a priest before an altar, muttering readings under his breath. Sometimes I'd catch him marking tiny notches into a ledger, the pages yellow and swollen from moisture. What are you counting? I asked once. The silences, he said simply. The moments when the sea forgets to breathe. Day 8. The 3 slow pings returned at dawn. Same pattern. Same depth. This time, the 4th bend flickered again, but for less than a second. Finn didn't react. He just watched the screen and said, it's listening back. Day 10 to 14. Fog never lifted. Wind held through the tower like a flute carved from bone. Once, while doing a maintenance check, I found the steel bolts at the base door slick with seawater, though the tide was far below the cliff line. I asked Finn about it. He just said, the moor spits when it's hungry. On the 14th night, the hunger found us. The first tremor came at 2:13 a.m. The tower shuddered like a living thing. Bolts groaned, lantern glass rattled. I ran to the console, watching the light's rotation stutter. 42 seconds stretched into 45. Finn was already climbing the spiral stairs with a sledgehammer in hand. "Power coupler jammed," he yelled. The whole structure leaned eastward. I swear I felt the island itself tilt beneath us. Metal screamed. From outside came a noise that wasn't thunder, deep, wet, rhythmic. I reached the top deck just in time to see it. Something massive, slick as oil and pale as bone, coiled around the tower's midsection. A tentacle thicker than a telephone pole, its skin covered in deep scoring marks like healed wounds. It tightened once, hard enough to make the beams cry out. Finn swung the hammer at the emergency switch. Sparks exploded. The backup generator howled as the light flared to triple brightness. For a moment, the fog itself turned white. The beam cut through it and struck something in the water, a shape too large, too many eyes reflecting back like shards of glass. Then came the scream. Not of a creature, but of the ocean itself tearing open. It dove. The impact threw us both against the railing. Spray rained upward like shrapnel. Then silence. When I dared to breathe again, the tower stood crooked, but whole. Finn grinned through blood on his teeth. "By the fjords," he panted, "she still stands." The company didn't reply to our distress message. The only transmission we received was a short ping an hour later, automated acknowledgement, no voice. That's when I realized, and no one was listening. Day 27. The wind stopped. Completely. You never know how loud silence is until you live inside it. Even the waves below were still. Finn said storms were coming, but I saw no clouds. Only mist, thick, wet, moving against the wind that wasn't there. At 1:47 a.m., I woke to a sound I hadn't heard in 3 years. My mother's voice. "Jamie." It came soft, muffled by the wall, like she was standing just outside my door. My chest went cold. She'd been dead since 2022, lung cancer. I'd buried her myself in Baltimore. "Jamie, open the door. You forgot the lights again." For a second, I almost reached the handle. Then Finn slammed my door shut from the outside and turned the lock. "Don't answer it," he shouted. The voice grew clearer. "You promised you wouldn't leave me alone." I backed away from the door, shaking. The sound wasn't through the air, it came through the stone. The floorboards vibrated with it. Finn hammered something against the wall outside. Then the old radio blared to life, channel 16, static roaring loud enough to rattle the bulbs. The voice stopped. When he unlocked the door, his face was pale. In his ears were plugs made of beeswax. He didn't say a word. He just pointed to the window. Far below, on the cliffside, were handprints. Dozens of them. Pressed upward, fingers digging into the rock like something had tried to climb out of the sea. The prints were small, human-sized, but burned black, as if scorched from within. Day 30 to 44. Finn started drinking heavily. He'd sit near the beacon housing, staring into the revolving lens. The light reflected in his eyes made him look hollow, like the illumination had carved something out of him. He began talking to the fog. Whispering in Faroese, voice soft, apologetic. I caught fragments. Something about blood debt and the drowned kings. When I asked what he meant, he said, "The more remembers names, lad. That's why we don't speak them after dark." Day 45, the fisherman. At dawn, the sonar screamed, all 4 bands at once. A mass approaching from 400 meters. I grabbed binoculars. Through the haze, I saw the faint outline of a fishing boat, hull cracked, sails shredded. A single man slumped against the wheel. We pulled him aboard. Lars Peterson. His face was frostbitten, eyes bloodshot from salt. He kept whispering, she called me home." When he woke in the infirmary, he screamed so hard it bent the cot frame. "Don't turn off the light. Don't let her up here." I tried to calm him, but he bit his lip until blood ran down his chin. Then he said, almost pleading, "She's waiting under the rocks. My wife." You have to take me down there. He tried to chew through the rope binding his wrists. Finn had to restrain him with a steel cable. We kept him locked in the tool room. For hours, he hummed an old sea shanty. Then the humming stopped. When we opened the door at sunrise, Lars was gone. The cable was snapped. The porthole was shattered outward. All that remained were wet footprints leading to the edge of the cliff, and below them, the same 3 pings on sonar. That night, neither of us slept. We sat beside the sonar, watching it repeat the same pattern. 3 slow beats. Then 4. I stared at the screen. That's new. Finn didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the window, where the fog glowed faintly blue. By the fjords, he whispered, "They are coming." We ran to the lantern deck. The sea below shimmered with faint bioluminescence, stretching across the horizon. Shapes moved under the surface, long, dark holes. 7 of them. Dead fleet, Finn muttered. Rule 4. He killed the light. The darkness that followed felt alive. We counted aloud, our voices trembling. 1, 2, 3. Outside, the fog shifted. Silhouettes of men stood on the decks of those ghostly ships, their faces turned upward toward us. At first I thought they were looking at the tower, then I realized their eyes glowed faintly, like lanterns, and they were smiling. 268, 270. A whisper rose with the wind, not words, just the sound of thousands of voices mouthing the same breath. 333. Finn slammed the switch. The light flared. The ships were gone. Only the mist remained, thick and blue, curling upward from the sea like smoke. Back inside, the console was sparking. The sonar's top band was dead. The other 3 pulsed unevenly, still echoing that slow 4-beat rhythm from the deep. I looked at Finn. We counted right, didn't we? He didn't answer. He just stared at the reflection in the glass. For a split second, I saw it too, behind us, in the reflection. A man standing by the door, soaked to the bone, eyes hollow. Lars Peterson. He raised his hand and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the lights flickered, and he was gone. That was the night Finn stopped laughing. That was the night I started writing everything down. Part 3: The Handover. The storm had lasted 3 days. Or maybe the days had stopped lasting. I'd lost track. The logbook said day 80, but the sky had looked the same since the fleet appeared, blue mist by night, grey haze by day. The light still turned every 42 seconds, steady and mechanical, the only heartbeat left on the island. Finn barely spoke. His face had gone slack, eyes sunken. He moved like a man underwater. We both knew something had changed. At dawn, the radio crackled. Static at first, then a flat electronic voice. Transmission, Nord Risk Solutions. New keeper arriving in 3 days. Prepare handover. Do not mention the rules. That was all. No explanation. No call sign. No signature. I waited for Finn to respond. He didn't. He just stared at the transmitter, the message replaying in the background, a hollow loop. Finally, he said, "They always send a new one when the old one's about to break." His tone wasn't bitter. It was tired. The cracks beneath. That afternoon, I did a full structural check. The tower's base had developed a hairline fracture along the northern support, wide enough to fit my thumb. The sonar beneath kept registering pressure fluctuations, like something enormous was moving directly under the island. At 14:06, the signal changed. The slow 4-beat pattern shifted into something new, 4 beats, then silence, then another 4, faster this time. A pulse, a rhythm. A heartbeat. I logged it in the maintenance record, but the entry wouldn't save. The computer glitched, displaying only one line of text. Don't let it go dark. I tried again. The same message appeared. That's when I realized the system wasn't malfunctioning. Someone, or something, had rewritten the software. Nightfall. Finn found me in the generator room, tightening bolts that didn't need tightening. He stood in the doorway, holding a bottle of aquavit. "You ever wonder what happens if we leave?" he asked. "Company would probably send the Coast Guard," I said. He smiled faintly. "No, lad. I mean, what happens to them?" He gestured toward the sea. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The sonar answered for me, another 4-pulse rhythm, louder this time. Finn took a long drink. "When my grandfather vanished, they said he was searching for Nazi gold. But he wasn't. He was looking for the light that went out before this one. They built this tower on top of the wreck, you know." "The wreck?" "A German U-boat. U-451. She was carrying something. The divers found the cargo bay sealed from inside. They left it there, buried in the trench. But the sea doesn't forget what we lock away." He handed me the bottle. "Nordrisk isn't paying us to save ships, Jim. They're paying us to contain something." The realization hit like a cold wave. "The light, it's not a warning signal." He nodded. "It's a cage." The second message. That night, the radio flared again, this time without static. A man's voice spoke calmly, clearly. "Keeper Callahan, this is Nordrisk Control. You are relieved of duty in 72 hours. Please prepare standard deactivation procedure. Maintain beam rotation. Maintain sonar sweep. No further transmissions authorized." Then a pause. "If the signal stops, the maw will open." The voice cut out. I stared at Finn. "You heard that?" He shook his head. Didn't say a word. But I had heard it. Every syllable. And I was sure of one thing, whoever spoke wasn't on any frequency I'd ever seen. Day 81, the descent. The sonar began to malfunction at 3 o'clock. One band flickered off, then another. Only 2 remained active, pulsing faster than normal. The display glowed red, temperature rising below the island. Finn and I took turns cooling the generators manually. At one point, he pointed at the window and whispered, "It's rising." Through the fog, I saw it, a faint spiral of bubbles breaking the surface, perfectly circular, as if the sea itself was exhaling. "Depth scan says 1800 meters," I said. "Whatever it is, it's coming up." He grabbed my shoulder. "Then we don't let the light stop." Day 82, the signal flare. The storm returned that night. Wind howled, waves slammed the cliff face. The tower shook. At 0:42, the rotation jammed again. The motor screamed, gears grinding metal. Finn ran to the base. "Override switch, same as before." But the lever was fused. I grabbed a hammer and slammed the casing open, sparks flying. The rotation stalled completely. The light froze. The sea went silent. For 90 seconds, nothing happened. Then the sonar flatlined. Finn's voice broke. "By the fjords, Jim, get it spinning." But the main breaker tripped. No power. Outside, the fog split apart like curtains drawn back by invisible hands. Something enormous surfaced. At first I thought it was the cliff collapsing, but then I saw eyes. Dozens of them, wide and white, reflecting the frozen beam. A body rose from the trench, massive, translucent, made of something not quite flesh. The Kraken. It moved slowly, as if the sea itself was lifting it in prayer. Each movement sent tremors through the tower. Finn shouted, "Don't look down." But I did. The creature's tendrils glowed faint blue under the water, spiraling upward toward the foundation. The sound that followed wasn't a roar, it was like 1,000 drowned voices gasping for air. I slammed the emergency flare gun into my hand and fired it through the open hatch. The red burst streaked into the fog, bathing the thing in crimson light. It recoiled, slowly, almost offended, then sank, leaving only boiling foam behind. When the generator rebooted, the beam turned again. 42 seconds. The island stopped shaking. Day 83, the handwriting. I woke on the control room floor. Finn was gone. His logbook lay open beside me. The last entry read, "I saw her in the light. She called my name." Beneath it, in smudged pencil, "Going to make it right." I ran to the stairwell. The outer door was open, wind screaming through. On the dock below, a single lantern burned. Finn stood at the edge, holding a rope, staring into the waves. "Finn!" I shouted. "Don't!" He turned, smiling faintly. "By the fjords, lad, it's all right. Someone has to keep the light below." Then he stepped backward and vanished into the sea. Day 84, the arrival. Morning came with a fog thicker than ever. The sea was calm. Too calm. The radio crackled one last time. "Incoming vessel, Nord Risk Supply 07. ETA 5 minutes." I packed my things. Not much, my duffel, Finn's logbook, 2 flares. I wrote one final line in the maintenance log. "The light isn't saving ships. It's keeping the rest of the world safe from what's under us." The hum of an engine drifted through the mist. I stepped onto the catwalk. Through the haze, I saw the outline of a boat, small, black, unmarked. A single man stood on deck, waving. He wore a company parka, face obscured by goggles and hood. "Callahan," he called. "You're relieved." His voice was calm. Too calm. Something about it made my skin crawl. I hesitated. Then I noticed the sonar. The 4-beat rhythm had changed again. Now it pulsed 5 times. B-A-dum. 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 I whispered under my breath, "Rule 5. I didn't remember writing it, but there it was, scrawled across the final page of my notebook in my own handwriting. Rule 5, don't trust the new guy. The man climbed the steps, his boots echoing through the steel stairwell. I gripped the flare gun. 2 shots left. When he reached the